It's 1:30, so I will call the meeting of the Judiciary Committee on March 31st, 2014 to order. The first subject on the agenda is a brief update and on the cases that are with Mr. Gilbert. The first one, the city versus Mr. Jones. And I believe that is just almost all over, or is there any final?
It's essentially, it's over with the decision in no time.
Okay. Two is the Johnson property, and I'd heard they've made good progress on getting it cleaned up.
They have, and we're still waiting for to do the environmental testing, which JS is handling.
Okay. So good progress there. The third one is the city versus Brenneke. I guess we're still waiting to hear from the judge on that.
That's correct. We got what's called a reply, a fourth filing of that, which is not provided for by the rules, so we objected. But depending on his schedule and what he's doing, I would say we should have a decision. Hopefully a couple of weeks to a month. We just don't know.
Yeah, it's up to the judge at this point.
Right.
The last one is the city versus Warner. And if I'm correct, that is virtually, we've heard from the judge. Judgment was for Mr. Warner to pay for.
And we've drafted the judgment. I haven't sent it over to him. I was going to do that on Friday and then we got interrupted. But it's finished and we'll send that over to him as soon as he comes back to file a memorandum of costs and a notice of entry judgment. Then we can execute.
Okay. Is there any question by either of you in regard to the cases and the bill?
On the, what is the judgment on?
Oh hell, I'm no good on the numbers. It's a little over $2,000 if I recall correctly. I'm just trying to figure it in my head. Just a little over. It might be a little under, but.
So we're just getting what the fine was plus the interest, is that correct?
We're getting the bill, the interest, and there's a little extra in there. And the interest goes all the way back, which isn't usual. That's a special thing.
So we're not recovering anything for lawyers' fees?
No.
Court costs?
No. I was optimistic, but no, he just didn't. Middle of December, one of the other judges in Missoula, in McLean, in a very similar case, is the opposing attorney for over $70,000. Fines, sanctions, interest, attorney's fees. But Larson didn't do it.
What approximately is our attorney's fees?
I'd have to add it up. This is a different file. This is just a general file. I didn't bring the case file, and it's outlined in there. They were substantial, but he kept us going for 4.5 years.
I guess the next question, you're on finance. Do we have the funds to pay all this? Or?
All the bills have been paid, the last bills, they've been paid ongoing through the 4.5 years. So it's just the last little bit of bill that'll come for filing these final papers. And then it's all over with. Well, I guess it's over with if he pays the judgment.
So on the Brenneke's, I'm assuming that that's probably all we're going to get to?
No, I don't assume that. I really think that we have that we're entitled to receive the attorney's penalties, fees, and sanctions and so forth under the law and under the facts of the case. However, the judge does have some discretion in that. Now, he has issued monetary sanctions against other lawyers and against banks in cases.
It's a different judge too,
Yeah,
correct?
it's a different judge. So we'll just see.
So that kind of updates the cases, and we have the bill of $705 and change, which seems to be appropriate for the work that's been done to date. So unless someone has a question or whatever, I will submit it for payment.
This is for which case?
This is for the 4 cases. They're small, it was emailed to you, did you? I emailed this and the agreement to you.
I've been having problems getting into my email.
Oh,
Essentially, it's the work done on those 4 matters since the 5th. And there's some conferences and question answering about how does this work around is like, but that's what it is essentially.
so it's a little bit of work on all 4 cases, so it's $705 and a little bit of change for some costs, so
705.
63. Any other question?
There are gonna be further costs on Renicky then?
I don't know. There will be a very little bit. If he rules the same way the judge did in Missoula, there won't be much. He did file that unauthorized pleading, and so we responded, so there's some work there that's not on the bill. So that's part of the problem with insurance. His attorney comes in and spends 40 minutes telling me how he's going to sue the council, how he's going to sue the city as opposed to the council, how he's going to sue 2 or 3 of the councilpeople individually. And for several different things. Well, it only took about 11 hours to figure out exactly what the hell he was talking about and why he was 100% wrong. But I can't not know, and I gotta know right.
Correct.
And that's the trouble with this damn thing. Like Judge Moore put in his city court case, he said that between the trial and when he assumed jurisdiction of that thing, there were 67 documents filed in that case. And the only ones I filed that weren't a response were I filed a motion for a protective order to require that the court approve anything being filed. And he granted it. But that didn't stop the 67 documents. So that's where the money goes. It's all this garbage.
I was just,
Yeah, just so you know.
So if there's no further question on the bill or update of the cases, we'll move to the next item. Okay, the last item is the agreement for Mr. Gilbert's services on these 4 cases, and as he said, Jones is gone, Johnson, be very little work left on that. Really the only one pending perhaps is the Renicky, but we do have to go, have an agreement to do business correctly. So this is a standard agreement
It's
for
typical
service.
retainer agreement that I would give to a private client.
I am pretty well
can I take that? I'm sorry.
answered my questions. And do you have any questions?
I gotta respond to your letters.
The agreement and the fees are appropriate and compatible with the standards of business that go on these days for legal representation, so.
It's the same we charge most of our clients. We get a few we charge less there. And, because they've been with us forever or whatever. And it does provide that some of the work can be done by the associates at a reduced rate.
Yeah, if you're gonna ask the question that came up the last time, this subject matter, I will go ahead and say that I kind of made a statement shooting off my hip, forgetting the fact that, things that were provided when he was representing the city are not represented or not provided for anymore. So the fee for the city was a reduced rate because he was provided protection by the insurance. So now,
Yeah, there's other stuff.
so, you know,
There's also a provision in there that if in any of those matters we reach a point where the conflict is resolved and no longer exists, then I can transfer him to Jim to finish, which is a little unusual, but it's appropriate.
and that would put,
Now, we're gonna just ask to approve or send this
to the council
City
for approval.
Council.
Yeah, I would entertain a motion to make a recommendation to the council to approve the agreement.
Move to send this to City Council for approval.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That pretty well concludes the business that we're on the agenda, unless there's any additional question or comment that anyone wants to make.
This is not on the agenda. I was just gonna ask Jim if didn't you say something about at one of the meetings, something about the attorneys and you getting hold of you about the gay rights?
Oh, no, I have asked for proposals, well, it's not the proposals, but the legislation that's been enacted, I gathered by both Helena and Butte, and those city attorneys for those two cities were kind enough to forward that information to me. I'm still waiting, I think, for the Bozeman ordinance.
And I have the Butte ordinance that they passed. And that discussion is scheduled for a meeting on April 14th at 7 p.m. So,
I was just asking if you
Yeah.
heard anything else, because I know
Yeah.
one council meeting.
Yeah, I haven't, as far as Bozeman goes, I haven't received anything back yet, but I'm trying to see if I can get that done this week sometime.
All right, thank you.
so at this point, I will open up the meeting to the public for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Can't see anybody, everybody, so I need a pillow. If there's no questions or no comments from anyone, I will ask for a
I would
motion.
ask a question. At the last meeting, I believe it was Craig Cornell asked if you can prepare an estimate or a total amount of money spent on Brennan Warren cases. Is that going to be ready for the next council meeting on Wednesday?
I don't have the status on that. Someone else was working on it, so I don't know.
Who would be working on that?
I believe Dave Spear commented that he might look into it, but I have no idea what the status on that is.
Now, he would have had to consult with Duke about that, certainly.
I assume so.
Duke, has he?
I don't know. Or are you asking me?
Yeah.
He did mention the request was made. I guess that's it, that's,
I mean,
You did?
would it be ready for Wednesday, or is it something that's going to take longer?
Well, he didn't ask me to do it. And, it would take a considerable amount of time to do that, when you consider that you go over 4.5, almost 5 years. The damn file fields a complete drawer, 2 cases together. So, I didn't want to start unless somebody specifically says do it.
The issue, or the cumbersome part of it is the billings, when they're presented to the city, include a large number of different issues, so you have to take, it's time consuming to isolate, so.
When you submitted bills, I noticed in your recent bills that you would always cite Bronchier Warner cases next to ours. Was that done over the past 5 years or not always?
In the beginning, we didn't, because we figured it would be a, just pretty much a modest task. As it went on, we started to do that because we knew we would have, if we were going to ask for the attorney's fees, we would need to have a good number, and the Water and Sewer Committee people would generally ask for a rough idea of where it was.
And do you have any idea what year you might have started keeping those?
No,
records?
I'm not going to guesstimate.
So it's possible we'll never have an exact number.
Well, I don't know that,
Yes,
Am I
state your name,
correct?
please.
Edith Fletcher, 325 South Dakota Street. I am correct, though, that we have spent, I don't have the figures either, but something like at least 10 times as much for those water meter cases as what we were getting. We were supposed to get $1,500 a piece, something like that. And we've spent 30, 40,000. Am I correct on that? Or it was very expensive legal process.
Every legal process is expensive, and what started out to be a simple fee collection turned into an entirely different thing. Sometimes you can't judge those things when you get in them, and then once you're in them, we kept trying to find a way out, and it was like swimming uphill.
the cost of the thing was entirely attributable to the actions of the defendants. If they had presented the normal defenses that they didn't owe it, or that the bill charged by the city was too much, and that sort of thing, it wouldn't have amounted to much at all. We ended up, I think, as a result of the defendant's action, I think the Warner case was in front of I think 6 different judges, maybe 7. Something like that.
I think it just bothers a lot of us that it's our taxpayers' money, and it's hard to believe that something, I don't know what, just quit and let them go, just charge them for the meters and be done,
Well,
because you're talking big money.
that was discussed several times with the council and the Water and Sewer Committee, particularly with the Water and Sewer Committee. And every time we come up with it, isn't there some way to get out of this thing? And the answer was either the judge has to shut them down, or we just tell them to keep it and walk away from it. And the decision always was, no, we'll have to go forward. Well, then they do more stuff and more stuff and more stuff, and I had to answer. You can't let, when you've got an opposing party in a lawsuit, you cannot let them file these things and not answer, because you're at a substantial risk that the court will say, because you didn't answer, they'll rule against you. No, it wasn't. very difficult.
Yes,
I have a question.
state your name.
My name is Jude Davis, and I live at 649 Kentucky Avenue. And I have attorneys in my family. My daughter-in-law teaches law at Loyola University. And I would like to know how this is justified. You said you might look into it, but who would we have to go to find out actually how much Mr. Gilbert charged, say, on one case? Like George's case. I'm a taxpayer, and I can't understand how you can justify paying, I don't know, $30,000, $40,000.
Well, that's the
Who would
question.
approve to pay him? The city council and the other mayor would approve to pay that much money for $1,500?
First of all, I don't think it was anywhere near that amount of money.
No, it wasn't, despite the,
Well, can we find out what the amount is?
You know, most of the time, requests for information are a written request into the office of the city, Dillon, and the administration takes care of a public request for information.
And I mentioned
So-
this in January to David Spear, and I do have to have it in writing.
To the city hall, not to the council. You write out what you want, bring it into city hall, say, I would like to have these documents. They will tell you what the charge is for the time to acquire them and the copying fee, and they will get that information for you.
So I would have to pay, so this would be extra money that I have to pay.
That is what the state has ruled, that when a government has to copy and provide information, that they may charge for the time and the copying of the documents for a public.
And I would be willing to pay that, but there's no city, I mean, this is not on file anywhere in the city?
Yes, it's on file on the city, and it would take them some time to pull that file
Could
out.
could I go in and look at it and figure it out?
No, they would have to pull the information out for you for what you asked for. If you asked for the billing on the Warner case, they would have to go through the records and pull out those billings for the Warner case and copy it for you and give it to you. It usually takes them a day or 2, 3 days, depending
Okay.
on what the
So
matter
you want
is.
to- But Mr. Gilbert, Duke, could you just give us an oral estimate now? I mean, you're a businessman, you're smart, you know about what you would pay.
because of all of the distortions and the incorrect numbers and so forth, I'm not gonna guess. I'm just not gonna guess. We've got the two cases have some differences, they're together. And it's not, in some places they're together, and it's not that simple a thing. As I said, the file occupies more, the two files together occupy more than a full file drawer. So there's a great deal of stuff in there, and I'm just not gonna guess.
I was an administrator of a department at Tulane Medical School. If somebody was paying me, I could give an estimate of what they paid me. But what you're saying is you can't even give an estimate?
I'm not gonna guess.
Okay.
Edith Fletcher again, I do, what I remember from the last Wednesday night council meeting was that it was directed to David Spear that he should go to Mr. Gilbert and get this information. So I don't know why he hasn't or what, but that's what I remember, if I remember correctly from
He
the
did
last
say
meeting.
that.
Well,
That was
and
what I was told.
I think said David mentioned it to you, and but other than that, I don't know what the status is. I haven't. So it's a question that David would have to answer if that's what he said at the council meeting. Mr. Graham?
Raymond Graham, 136 West Bannock. About a council meeting at approximately a month and a half ago, Mr. Trochen actually had the information up to December, and I believe he said it was like $29,000. So is that a close estimate? I don't know where Mr. Trochen got his number. I'm assuming he got him from Duke.
I don't know. I don't
So-
remember even that number being
I
said.
don't remember either.
Yeah, that was
December, it was 29,000.
It was in the past couple months.
right. That was actually at the meeting when you guys were talking about whether or not you actually wanted to hire Duke. And Mr. Trochen actually said, well, I've got the numbers right. Today we have spent $30,000, so I really think we need to go get it. Before you even decided you was going to hire Duke to go after this, that was in the meeting. In fact, I think it was a Judiciary Committee meeting because you was discussing whether or not you was going to hire Duke. It was at that.
And I will
I was just curious if he got the numbers from Duke or where he got his numbers, I don't
I
know.
have no idea where he got his numbers,
If
and I
you-
have no idea if that included the Brenneke and the Warner
Yes, it
case,
did.
or the
He
four
said-
case. Okay.
At least I hope, I hate to think it's 30,000 on one case.
I-
Now, did he get them numbers from you, Duke, or?
I don't really know.
Okay, I don't, because he had them wrote on a piece of paper down there, and you got them from somewhere.
So you don't know if Sweet ever approached you for numbers about those cases within the last couple months?
Yeah, well, I can't remember, I don't think so.
Did David approach you for them numbers back in early January?
I,
Or Lynn? I'm assuming the way he talked, they come from, the way he seemed pretty sure them were exact numbers, and I'm assuming he must have got them from your office, or someone got them from your
See, I think
office.
the problem has been, there's been too many assumptions and too many
Well,
guesses and too many whatever. So-
Sweet had it wrote down and said these
Yeah,
are the
so, you know,
numbers.
Sweet says something and somebody else says something else, and everything gets blown out of proportion. And, you know, if you want to know exact, come in and ask City Hall, pull the numbers out for you, and we'll know exactly.
and that's why,
And put an end to this guessing and,
that's why I'm not gonna guess.
Right, well, and I'm not asking you to guess, I'm just,
yeah.
Sweet had them wrote down, and he said these are the numbers. I'm assuming unless Councilman Sweet was just pulling numbers out of the air and said this is it to justify you guys hiring Duke again. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Them were his
either.
numbers.
don't
I could
know.
review my tape, I guess, and get them.
Yeah, it
I
should
don't
be
know
on there.
if his reference was to 2 cases, 3 cases, I don't know.
He said the two. Okay.
Jude Davis on Kentucky Avenue, excuse me. So if I write a letter and have it notarized,
No, it just has to be a simple request, just, it doesn't have to be anything real formal, just a date. I request this, and sign your name, bring it into city.
okay, I'll do that. Because this has been going on for a long time, and I just can't believe people can't remember, or they don't know, or,
Well,
okay, so we'll write a letter and
we go through a lot of meetings and a lot of numbers and a lot of stuff.
it's a small town, and it seems like it's a lot of the same things, but
Well,
Edith Fletcher, regarding the charge for this work, there was a letter, I think in the Dillon a few weeks ago from Lynn Giles. But she had requested some time ago information on, you all know what I'm talking about.
It was in January.
Communications between, during the turnover of regimes, and she wrote a letter that she was not getting any cooperation, and that one of the city councils, she didn't say who was charging her.
all requests
You're
for,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
it said
exorbitant hourly amount, which according to her was way over the legal amount. So that's another question, if you do this research.
that would be a
what was
que-
legally charged?
that would be a question for Mayor Clacken, because he handles those requests. You know, I do believe she, had some requests for information that is not available here in this office.
There was I was listed as one of the people that they asked the information from. I searched my records. Thirdly, the ones that I had left was 4 months, because I turned most of it over to Mr. Dolan. And I made a written report and gave it to the assistant here at City Hall, so I don't know what happened after that.
Yes.
My name is Morris Jennings. What I have to say is really water under the bridge now at this point in time, but originally, when the resolution was made on these water meters, it was made to put in 100 water meters for a trial. It was not made to do the whole town. I don't know how that ever came about, because I've never been able to find evidence where the council ever made the decision to do the whole town. Again, it's water under the bridge today. We've spent thousands of dollars on attorney fees and everything else, and didn't follow what the council requested originally. Thank you. And I do have a formatted FOI letter that I will give Jude so that she may present that formally to the city. Thank you.
Mr. Graham?
One thing on the email thing, and I don't know if you guys are following it, but a long time ago, this issue was brought up when I was on the council, and actually a standard rule of thumb is when you email Mr. Nye, you're supposed to CC a copy of it to the clerk, so the clerk legally is supposed to have a copy of all communications between, I don't know, are you guys doing that? Like the last email you sent Mr. Nye, is there a copy of that available at City Hall?
I have never
Okay, because that's actually under the state information, freedom of information stuff, that emails that pertain to the city, a copy of it has to be registered at City Hall. That was actually something that was done, I believe, if you go through, there's a big old list about yay tall stack of papers that the city of Dillon actually did because they had to do a request on how, records handling request papers or what law or whatever you want to call it. But that was actually in the thing that all emails sent between councilmen, a copy of it would be CC'd at City Hall. And if all that was done, this research for emails wouldn't be that hard, it'd be a matter of click on the thing and here they are. But that's
Well, you know,
legally,
I'm sure
according to the city ordinances, that's what's supposed to happen. When you email Mr. Nye, and Mr. Nye emails you or whatever, you're supposed to CC a copy of them to the city clerk, and she's supposed to keep a copy of them. That's actually in the information.
There is
the
nothing in
city
the
of
city
Dillon.
ordinances that make that requirement.
Yes, there is. It's not actually in the ordinance, but it's in, the city of Dillon passed a record handling policy, I guess that's the best way to say it. As per state law, you had to have some kind of records management system on how you're gonna do this and that. And the city council passed a resolution or a policy or whatever you wanna call it on how they was gonna handle emails and whatever, and that was actually in the policy handbook, where that all emails would be CC'd to the City Hall. Duke was actually on the, or was the city attorney at that time, maybe he would remember it or not, I don't know. But I do remember we actually had to pass one because the state, and I don't know if it was a new law that the state passed or, but I know you can go online now to the Department of, I gotta think which government agency it is, and there's actually a list that shows you how, by law, what you have to do as far as emails and stuff, and that's something if you're in the state office or whatever it is, if you're emailing pertaining business, that email has to be on record someplace available to the public for, and it's laid out for some stuff indefinitely, some stuff a year, some stuff 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, any private emails, if you're emailing on city business, it's not private, and a copy of it is supposed to go to City Hall because it is public business.
Okay. Are there any other comments or statements? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?